All right, for this explainer, we're digging into a pretty fiery segment from Sky News Australia. They're looking at the whole situation with Iran, and really, they frame it as a tale of two completely different leaders. You've got one who they call, well, a useful idiot, and another who's presented as the super decisive strongman. So yeah, let's get right into it.
And wow, they come out swinging. The piece kicks off with this incredibly sharp jab at the UK Prime Minister Kier Starmer. And look, language like this, it's not just there for shock value, right? It's a really deliberate choice. It's meant to set the stage and frame everything else we're about to hear.
So the whole argument really hinges on this big contrast, this tale of two leaders. It's a classic storytelling move, and they use it here to paint a super clear black and white picture of how you should or shouldn't handle the crisis in Iran.
And this slide just lays it all out perfectly. I mean, look at this. On one side, you have Kier Starmer, and the words they use are weak, hopeless, a useful idiot. Then, on the other side, you've got Donald Trump, who's all about strength, courage, and decisive action. It couldn't be more different. The source basically presents these as the only two options, with absolutely no room in the middle. Okay, so let's dig into how they actually build this case against the UK Prime Minister. Because this isn't just a throwaway line, They spend a good chunk of time really going after his leadership piece by piece.
And here's where we get into the real nitty-gritty of their claims. This isn't just a vague feeling of weakness they're talking about. No, the source makes some really specific and pretty heavy accusations. I mean, they're alleging he took false credit for a ceasefire, all the way to claiming he's prioritizing a so-called jihadi voter base. It's pretty direct.
Then, to really drive home how serious they think this is, they bring in this quote. It's attributed to Reza Pahlavi, the Crown Prince of Iran. And using this quote, it's a way of framing Starmer's supposed inaction as something much bigger than just a political mistake. They're painting it as this huge historical betrayal that, people won't forget.
All right, so that's one side of the story. Now, let's flip the coin. After really going after Starmer, the segment does a complete 180 and starts building up Donald Trump. He's presented as basically the only effective leader out there, the only one with the guts to actually take on Iran, according to them. And this gets to the heart of their entire philosophy. The guests' core belief is that in the Middle East, you can't play by the usual rules. Negotiation, appeasement, they see all that as weakness. In their view, the only language the Iranian regime gets, the only thing they respect, is a massive show of force.
So what does that look like in practice? Well, here's the three-part strategy they lay out. First, a huge blockade to cut off oil money. Then, offer one last chance for unconditional surrender. And finally, use that to show the world that you just can't negotiate. It's a very clear shock and awe playbook. And you'll notice there's really no space here for diplomacy. It is all about forcing the other side to give in.
And to back all this up, they drop this pretty wild claim, a 90% approval rating for Donald Trump inside Iran. I mean, that is a huge number and really makes you stop and think, right? Where does a number like that even come from, and what does it really mean in this whole discussion?
So this whole argument, this whole contrast between the weak leader and the strong leader, it's all building to one central point about what's actually happening on the ground. And their big claim is this: the Iranian regime is basically about to collapse.
The host then basically sets the guest up perfectly with this question. It frames the regime as just gasping for air, like a paper tiger that's about to fall over. It's the perfect setup for the guest to jump in and say, here's what's really going on.
And here's the evidence they offer for that claim. The guest brings up rumors that the supreme leader hasn't been seen, that he might even be disfigured. They claim the military is just gone, the Navy, the Air Force, all of it. And they even point to the fact that the regime was apparently too scared to hold a big public funeral for the last supreme leader. They see all of this as proof that the regime is internally crumbling.
So if the regime is so weak, why doesn't everyone see it? Well, according to the source, there are specific groups who are willfully ignoring all these signs. They claim it's woke lefties, Democrats, and communists who are pushing this false story about the regime actually being strong.
Okay, so where is all of this heading? The whole segment builds and builds to this one final point, which they present as a direct message, a plea, really, coming from the Iranian people themselves.
And this next quote is meant to totally flip the script on what the real danger is. The argument they're making is that for people in Iran, the thing they're most afraid of isn't bombs from another country, it's their own regime staying in power.
And that leads us to this.
The grand finale, the ultimate call to action from their perspective. This is the message they claim Iranians have right now. It's a really powerful statement, and what it does is it reframes the whole idea of military action. It's not an invasion, they argue. It's finishing a job at the request of the people.
So, there you have it. We've just walked through a very specific, very forceful viewpoint on the Iran crisis, all from this one Sky News segment. It's a narrative that really champions absolute strength over any kind of negotiation. And it kind of leaves us with a bigger question, doesn't it? When you're dealing with global crises, is this kind of all-or-nothing argument actually helpful, or does it reveal something more about the state of our political conversations today?